What if I told you that everything you've been taught about storytelling is missing a crucial piece? That the way we've been taught to spin tales, whether in books, movies, or even our everyday lives, focuses too much on emotion and not enough on action. Think about it. How often have you poured your heart into a story, hoping to inspire change, only to feel like your message didn't stick? Here's the truth. Emotion alone won't get you there. Real power lies in pragmatic storytelling, the kind of storytelling that doesn't just tug at heartstrings, but drives people to think, act, and transform. Intrigued? Good, because in this video, we're diving into a method of storytelling that's bold, practical, and game-changing. We're talking about crafting narratives that move beyond inspiration and into action. So, stick around, because if you're ready to tell stories that truly matter, that resonate deeply and create impact, this is the video you can't afford to miss. Number 1. The polarizing truth. Hook. Let's face it, most people don't like to hear the truth, especially when it's inconvenient. But here's the kicker, that's precisely what makes the truth so powerful. When you tell a story that doesn't tiptoe around, that isn't polished to avoid stepping on toes, you grab attention like nothing else. Sounds risky, right? Sure, but it's also a surefire way to make people stop scrolling, lean in, and actually listen. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but won't people just tune out if it's too controversial? Trust me on this. When done right, the polarizing truth doesn't push people away. It pulls them in by challenging their assumptions and sparking curiosity. You know the type of conversations I'm talking about, the ones where someone drops a statement that feels so bold, it makes everyone pause. Maybe it's at a dinner party, in a team meeting, or even just scrolling through social media. We've all been there, caught off guard by something that hits too close to home. And let's be honest, whether you agreed with it or not, you couldn't help but think about it long after the moment had passed. That's the power of unapologetically sharing a truth that others shy away from. It sticks. So here's the idea. Instead of telling a safe, predictable story, start with a polarizing truth. Something that's not just different, but deliberately challenges the way your audience might see the world. For instance, most people aren't stuck because they don't have enough time. They're stuck because they refuse to prioritize what really matters. Ouch, right? But doesn't it also make you pause and reflect? That's the magic. When you present a truth people aren't used to hearing, it jolts them out of autopilot and makes them question their reality. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, I was leading a group project at work. Everyone was dancing around the elephant in the room. Our approach wasn't working, and nobody wanted to admit it. Finally, I said, "We're wasting everyone's time trying to make this broken system work. Why don't we scrap it and build something that actually does what we need?" There was silence. I could feel the tension, the defensiveness creeping in. But you know what happened next? People started nodding, slowly at first, then with enthusiasm. We didn't just fix the system, we built something that made our work better for months to come. And it all started with a moment of uncomfortable honesty. Here's why this works. People are drawn to authenticity. When you dare to say what others are too scared to, you're not just telling a story, you're giving your audience permission to think differently. It's not about being aggressive or confrontational. It's about being real in a world that often prizes politeness over progress. Yes, you might ruffle a few feathers, but you'll also earn respect. This isn't just about storytelling. It's about reclaiming your voice, your perspective, and your power. When you own your truth, you inspire others to do the same. And honestly, isn't that what we all crave? A little more courage, a little less noise. So the next time you tell a story, don't settle for what's safe. Go for the truth that makes people lean in, the truth that leaves them thinking, wow, I needed to hear that. Because here's the thing, polarizing truths aren't about creating division, they're about creating depth. And in a world of surface-level connections, that's a gift worth sharing. Number 2, the imperfect hero narrative. Let me ask you something. Why do we always root for the underdog? Think about it. It's not the perfect, flawless hero that captivates us. It's the one who stumbles, struggles, and somehow finds a way to rise. Here's the surprising truth. Perfection is overrated. And more importantly, it's unrelatable. People don't connect with perfection. They connect with the messy, imperfect, and painfully human stories. That's why the imperfect hero narrative is so powerful. It's the secret weapon to truly engaging storytelling, and trust me, it's easier to use than you think. We've all been there, trying to make our lives, our work, or even our Instagram posts look polished and flawless. You know the type. The meticulously edited photos, the perfectly worded captions, the endless drive to get everything just right. But deep down, doesn't that feel exhausting? And let's be real, when was the last time you looked at someone's perfect life and thought, wow, I really relate to this? My guess is never. Because perfection alienates, while imperfection brings us closer. Here's the twist. Instead of trying to present yourself or your story as perfect, lean into the imperfections. Share the struggles, the mistakes, and the awkward moments. Because when you do, people stop seeing you as someone on a pedestal and start seeing you as someone just like them. Let's face it, everyone loves a hero who screws up but keeps going anyway. And you know why? Because that's real life. That's all of us. I remember this one time at work when I was tasked with leading a presentation. I had everything planned out. The slides were perfect, the data was solid, and I thought I was ready. But halfway through, I completely blanked out. My mind went dark, and there was this awkward silence that felt like an eternity. I could feel the room waiting for me to recover, and in that moment, I had two choices: pretend like it didn't happen or own up to it. So I smiled nervously and said, "Wow, that was my brain just hitting the reset button. Let's try that again." Everyone laughed. It broke the tension, and I finished the presentation stronger than I started. What I learned that day is this: people aren't looking for someone who has it all together. They're looking for someone who shows them that it's okay to fall apart sometimes and still keep going. That's the imperfect hero in action. Someone who stumbles but stands back up. Someone who fails but tries again. It's not about glorifying failure. It's about celebrating resilience. This is about more than storytelling. It's about how we show up in life. When you embrace your imperfections, you give yourself permission to be human, and you give others permission to do the same. You're saying, hey, I'm not perfect, but I'm here, and I'm trying. And honestly, isn't that enough? So, the next time you tell a story, don't shy away from the messy parts. Lean into them. Let your audience see the cracks, because that's where the light comes through. And remember, being an imperfect hero doesn't make you less. It makes you unforgettable. Your stumbles, your struggles, your resilience, that's where your power lies. Embrace it, own it, share it. Because your story, in all its imperfect glory, might just be the one someone else needs to hear. Number 3. The shock value shift. What if I told you that the best way to grab someone's attention isn't to ease them into a story, but to hit them with something so unexpected, so bold, that they can't look away? That's the magic of the shock value shift. It's not about being outrageous for the sake of it. It's about delivering a jolt that makes your audience stop, think, and lean in. I know, it sounds risky. You're probably thinking, won't people get turned off? But hear me out. When done right, this approach doesn't alienate. It captivates. It's like shaking someone awake in the middle of a dream and saying, "Hey, this is important." We've all experienced moments where something completely unexpected snapped us out of autopilot. Maybe it was an unusual headline, a plot twist in a movie, or even a brutally honest comment from a friend. You know the kind that lingers in your mind for days because it felt raw and real. Those moments stick because they force us to reevaluate, to think differently. And that's exactly why the shock value shift is so powerful. It cuts through the noise and makes people feel. Here's the strategy. Start with something bold, even unsettling. Say what everyone's thinking, but no one's saying, or flip a common belief on its head. For example, instead of saying, "You need to manage your time better," you could hit them with, "Most of your to-do list is a waste of time." Ouch, right? But it makes you curious. It makes you ask, "Wait, what am I doing wrong?" That's the shift. You disrupt their expectations, and in that moment of disruption, they're ready to listen. Let me tell you a story. A few months ago, during a team meeting, we were brainstorming ways to improve productivity. Everyone was throwing around the usual ideas: better tools, clearer deadlines, more meetings. It felt like we were spinning our wheels. So, I decided to try the shock value shift. I said, "Honestly, half of what we're doing here doesn't even matter. We're just busy being busy." You could have heard a pin drop. At first, people looked stunned, maybe even offended. But then someone said, "Okay, let's talk about what really matters." That single moment shifted the entire conversation, and we ended up cutting out unnecessary tasks that had been dragging us down for months. Why does this work? Because people crave authenticity and clarity. The shock value shift isn't about being rude or dramatic. It's about breaking through the clutter and saying, "Here's what's real." It challenges people to rethink their assumptions and opens the door for meaningful change. It's not always comfortable, but it's always effective. This is about more than storytelling. It's about reclaiming your ability to communicate with impact. It's about being bold enough to disrupt the status quo in a way that sparks growth, not defensiveness. So, the next time you're sharing an idea, don't be afraid to start with a shock. Say the thing that others won't. Ask the question that no one dares to ask. Because when you shift someone's perspective, even just a little, you create the possibility for transformation. So here's your challenge. Be the person who speaks the uncomfortable truth, who breaks through the noise, who makes others pause and reflect. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Your voice, your perspective, your willingness to disrupt, that's your power. Use it wisely and watch how it changes everything. Number 4, the empathy mirror technique. Have you ever felt like no one really gets you? Like you're explaining yourself over and over, yet the other person just doesn't seem to understand? Frustrating, isn't it? Now imagine flipping that script, not just to be understood, but to understand others so deeply that they can't help but feel connected to you. That's the power of the empathy mirror technique. It's not some woo-woo concept. It's a practical, actionable way to build genuine connections and solve problems before they even arise. And yes, it works even if the other person is stubborn or just plain difficult. You know those moments when someone shares something and you're just waiting for your turn to respond. We've all been there. Maybe it's with a co-worker who's venting about a project or a friend spilling their heart out. And while you're listening, part of your brain is crafting the perfect reply. But here's the thing, people don't want solutions as much as they want to feel seen. That's where the empathy mirror comes in. It's about reflecting their emotions back to them, not to mimic, but to show you truly understand. Here's how it works. Instead of jumping in with advice or your perspective, pause and mirror their words and feelings. If someone says, "I'm so overwhelmed with everything right now," respond with something like, It sounds like you've got so much on your plate and it's really weighing on you. Simple, right? But incredibly effective. Why? Because it tells the other person, I hear you, I see you. And in a world where everyone's shouting over each other, that's a rare gift. I remember trying this with a colleague who always seemed defensive during meetings. No matter what anyone suggested, they'd push back. One day, instead of countering their points, I mirrored their concerns. It sounds like you're worried this change might cause more confusion than clarity. Their whole demeanor shifted. They nodded and said, exactly, that's what I'm afraid of. From there, we had a real conversation, not an argument. It was a game changer, not just for that moment, but for our working relationship. The beauty of this technique is that it doesn't require you to agree or compromise your own stance. It's not about giving in, it's about creating space for understanding. When people feel heard, they're more likely to listen in return. And let's be honest, who doesn't want that? It's not about being a pushover, it's about building bridges instead of walls. This is about more than just improving conversations. It's about reclaiming the power of connection. It's about transforming misunderstandings into opportunities for deeper relationships, whether at work, with friends, or even at home. So the next time you're faced with a tense situation or someone who's venting, try the empathy mirror. Pause, reflect their feelings, and watch how it changes the dynamic. Because here's the truth. We're all just trying to feel understood. And when you master the art of mirroring empathy, you're not just communicating, you're connecting. That's the kind of power that transforms lives, starting with your own. Number 5, the moral gray zone. Plotline. Let me ask you this. Have you ever been caught between what's right and what's necessary? It's an uncomfortable place, isn't it? The kind of situation where the textbook answer doesn't quite fit, and you're left navigating a mess of emotions, logic, and consequences. This is what I like to call the moral gray zone, and believe me, it's where some of the most powerful decisions and transformations happen. We've all been there. Maybe it's at work, where following the rules to the letter could mean missing a crucial deadline, or in a friendship, where telling a small white lie might spare someone unnecessary pain. You know the type of moments I'm talking about, the ones where doing the right thing isn't as black and white as we'd like it to be. And let's face it, living in the gray zone can feel like you're constantly walking a tightrope, afraid of tipping too far in either direction. Here's the twist, though. The moral gray zone isn't something to fear or avoid. In fact, embracing it can lead to some of the most authentic, impactful decisions of your life. The key is to approach it with clarity, empathy, and a willingness to challenge rigid notions of right and wrong. Think of it as crafting a story where the protagonist, you, has to navigate complex terrain to emerge stronger, wiser, and more connected to their own values. I remember a time when I faced one of these moments. A colleague of mine was struggling with a task they couldn't quite figure out, and instead of asking for help, they were quietly sinking under the weight of it. My first instinct was to jump in and fix things for them, but I knew that wouldn't actually help them grow. So I decided to gently nudge them in the right direction without taking over completely. It felt risky. What if they resented me? What if it backfired? But in the end, they not only succeeded, but also thanked me for believing in their ability to figure it out. That moment taught me that sometimes the best way to help someone isn't the obvious one. It's the one that sits in that uncomfortable gray space. The moral gray zone challenges us to think beyond simplistic answers. It forces us to consider context, intent, and the greater good. It's not about breaking rules for the sake of it, but about reimagining them when they no longer serve their purpose. And yes, it's messy, but isn't that what makes it real? Life isn't a polished highlight reel. It's a series of imperfect decisions that shape who we are. This isn't about giving yourself permission to be careless or unethical. It's about owning the complexity of being human and understanding that growth often comes from the tension between conflicting values. When you lean into that tension, you reclaim your power to write your own narrative, one that isn't bound by others' expectations, but grounded in your own truth. So the next time you find yourself in the moral gray zone, don't panic. Don't retreat to the safety of black and white. Instead, step into the discomfort with courage and curiosity, because that's where the magic happens. That's where you find not just the solution, but also yourself. Remember, the story of your life doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. Number 6, the power move. Ending. You know, there's this common saying, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And while it sounds cliché, there's a reason it sticks. It's true. Think about it. We often obsess over how to begin things, how to make a good first impression, or how to get the ball rolling. But how many times do we give the same energy to the ending? Whether it's a conversation, a project, or even a relationship, the way you end something can define how it's remembered. And here's the kicker. It's not just about wrapping things up. It's about leaving a lasting impression that screams confidence, purpose, and clarity. That's what I call the power move ending. Now, you might be thinking, why does the ending even matter if the rest was already good or bad? Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever walked away from a movie or a book and felt underwhelmed because the ending didn't land? Or maybe you've left a conversation feeling unsure because it fizzled out instead of concluding with purpose. We've all been there. Endings stick with us, often more than beginnings or middles. It's what people remember. It's the final note of your song, the period at the end of your sentence, and it has the potential to completely redefine the narrative. Here's the strategy. Don't just let things fade out. End with intention. Whether you're delivering a pitch, having a difficult conversation, or even writing an email, think of the last moment as your mic drop. This isn't about being dramatic or over the top. It's about clarity and impact. You leave no room for doubt about where you stand or what you want. It's about ending on your terms, in a way that feels powerful and self-assured. Sure, it takes practice. You might stumble a few times, but the more you embrace this mindset, the more natural it becomes. Let me share a quick story. A few months ago, I had to give a presentation that I wasn't feeling particularly confident about. The content was solid, but I was second-guessing myself. Then, as I rehearsed, I realized the ending felt flat, like it just drifted off into nothingness. So I changed it. I added a strong, definitive takeaway. I made eye contact with the room and said, "This is your moment to take action. It's not about waiting for the perfect time. It's about creating it." That was it. Short, clear, and confident. Afterward, people came up to me, not to talk about the slides or stats, but to say how that final statement hit them. The power move ending wasn't just for me, it was for them. Here's the beautiful thing about mastering your endings. They give you control, they give you closure, and they give others something to carry with them. Your words, your energy, your impact. It's about reclaiming your narrative, even when the middle felt shaky. It's about saying, "This is who I am, and this is what I stand for." It's not just about ending well, it's about ending strong. So, the next time you're wrapping something up, whether it's a conversation, a task, or even just your day, pause and ask yourself, what's my power move ending here? Because that final moment isn't just the end, it's your legacy. Make it count. Number 7, the pragmatic villain. Twist. Let's be honest, nobody wakes up thinking, "Today I want to be the bad guy." Yet sometimes stepping into the role of the so-called villain might be the smartest, most pragmatic move you can make. Wait, don't hit pause just yet. This isn't about turning into a supervillain or wreaking havoc. It's about flipping the narrative and owning choices that others might label as wrong, simply because they challenge the status quo. The pragmatic villain twist isn't about being cruel. It's about making decisions rooted in logic, clarity, and self-preservation, even if it ruffles a few feathers. Now, you might be thinking, but isn't being the villain a bad thing? Not necessarily. Think about all the times you've bent over backward to keep the peace, saying yes to things you didn't want, avoiding confrontation, or sacrificing your own needs to keep everyone else happy. We've all been there, playing the hero in someone else's story while quietly ignoring our own. The problem: heroes get burned out. Heroes rarely set boundaries, and sometimes heroes end up feeling resentful because they never get to prioritize themselves. That's where the pragmatic villain twist comes in. It's not about being mean, it's about being intentional. Here's the twist. When you embrace the villain label in situations where you need to put yourself first, you're not actually being bad. You're being bold. You're refusing to play by the unspoken rules that say you should always compromise or settle. For example, declining an invitation because you need time to recharge might make you the bad guy for a moment, but it's actually a move of self-respect. Standing up for your ideas in a meeting might make you seem difficult to someone, but it's how you get your voice heard. It's about choosing the long-term benefits over short-term approval. Let me share a story to bring this idea to life. A friend of mine once got into a sticky situation at work. She was the go-to person for every project, every little task, and every last-minute favor. People loved her for being so reliable, but she was drowning in work and losing herself in the process. One day, she decided to draw a line. She started saying no to tasks that weren't in her job description and stopped staying late to fix other people's mistakes. Guess what happened? Some colleagues grumbled. One even called her selfish, but she stuck to her guns, knowing that she wasn't being unfair, she was being realistic. Within a few months, her workload became manageable, her mental health improved, and ironically, people began respecting her more because she set boundaries. Was she the villain in some people's eyes? Sure, but she was the hero of her own story. The beauty of the pragmatic villain twist is that it's liberating. It teaches you that it's okay to let others misunderstand you if it means protecting your peace and your priorities. This isn't about being malicious or unkind. It's about stepping out of the people-pleaser narrative and stepping into one where you're in control. It's about making peace with the fact that you can't please everyone, and that's perfectly fine, because when you stop trying to be liked by all, you make room to be respected by the right ones. So here's your takeaway. Next time you're faced with a choice where being the good guy feels like a sacrifice of your needs or values, pause. Ask yourself, am I okay being the villain in this moment if it means staying true to myself? If the answer is yes, lean into it. Reclaim your space, your time, and your energy, even if it means wearing the villain cape for a little while. Because sometimes, the strongest move you can make isn't about being the hero. It's about being unapologetically, pragmatically you. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope this video gave you a fresh perspective on the power of pragmatic storytelling and how it can create real, meaningful impact in your life. If you found this video valuable, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up. It really helps support the channel. And if you're into topics like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. Do you know someone who could benefit from a new approach to storytelling? Share this video with them. It might just spark a transformative idea, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's your experience with storytelling? Have you tried shifting from emotional to pragmatic approaches? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. Remember, your stories have the power to not just inspire, but to ignite change. Keep crafting, keep sharing, and keep making an impact. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep telling stories that matter. See you in the next video.